It's now 6 p.m. and I would like to call this public hearing to order. It's Tuesday, January the 6th, 2026. And I'd like to welcome our MLA, Julie Van Axen. Julie is a faithful supporter of our meetings, and we appreciate seeing you here, Julie. Thank you for attending. We do not need to do a roll call or ask for an excuse of absence, as all members of council are here in attendance. I note that in a public hearing, the council's role is to hear the staff presentation as well as comments from the public on the files and information presented. There will be no debate. However, any members of council may ask questions of clarification of either staff or of the public. So, our first item of business this evening is an application to rezone 1184 Parkway Drive, PID 55037063, Port Williams, from the general commercial C1 zone to the light industrial commercial M1 zone. File 25-08. Perry Bowman, our municipal planner, one of them, will be presenting. Ms. Bowman, I turn the floor over to you, and there you go.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Good evening, everyone. So as Mr. Mayor advised, we are here this evening to discuss an application for rezoning at 1184 Parkway Drive, Port Williams. So, in regards to the proposal is to amend the land use bylaw to rezone the subject property from the general commercial C1 zone to the light industrial commercial M1 zone to permit the development of bulk mineral storage, or in this case, salt storage. So I will note that the applicant has advised that they wish to construct a building to the rear of the existing building on site for the purposes of storage of approximately 100 tons of salt. I will also note that this application process does not provide consent for development. We are simply looking at the land use proposed in order to consider land use conflicts. So this is our map of the County of Kings, with the red circle indicating the approximate location of the subject site within the village of Port Williams. This is an aerial image of the subject site with the subject site outlined in red. The subject site is approximately 7.5 acres in area and is located on the southern side of Parkway Drive with approximately 440 feet of street frontage. The site backs onto the Cornwallis River and does have a dike located along the rear of the subject site in this somewhat of an S formation here. So as stated before, the subject site has a building on it which is used as a sheet metal workshop, which falls under the land use of professional trades. The professional trades land use is permitted under both the general commercial C1 zone and the light industrial M1 zone. To the west, we have an agricultural parts, business. To the east, while this map is not currently up to date, we do have a building and construction contractor's use here. To the north, we have a self-storage facility, and then we also have motorcycle retail facility here. So this is our zoning map. The land in the red zone, in the red colour, along with the subject site, is in the general commercial C1 zone. The property directly to the east has been rezoned to the light industrial commercial M1 zone. And then further to the east, we have the environmental constraints O1 zone. To the north, we have the residential 1 and 2 unit R zone in the pink colour. And then further to the east, we have the central business, further to the west, we have the central business zone in yellow. I will note that through the adoption of the Port Williams secondary plan in 2010, the land in this area was rezoned to the general commercial C1 zone. Prior to that, it was the light industrial commercial M1 zone. So along with the range of zoning covering the subject site and surrounding land, we do have a number of environmental features that occur on this subject site. We have the environmentally sensitivity area overlay, which is this kind of diagonal hatch going across the subject site. So the subject site is fully covered by the environmental sensitivity area overlay. This overlay does not prohibit development, it simply puts in place additional development standards that need to be considered at the time of permitting. Further to that, we have the urban floodplain overlay level 1, which again fully covers the subject site. Again, that doesn't prohibit development, but it does require flood resistant construction up to a surge height of 28.2 feet. We do also have the subject site being partially covered by this orange coloured overlay, which is the protected marshland overlay. I will note that the area proposed to be developed at this point is kind of in the middle here, which is not within this orange area. So the protected marshland overlay is under the jurisdiction of the Department of Agriculture. The front portion of the site actually has an exemption, which means that if they wanted to develop in this area, a variation would not be required from the Department of Agriculture. However, this back portion to the rear does not have that exemption. So I guess there are a range of environmental factors on this subject site, but none of them prohibit development in this rear area. There are additional requirements at the time of permitting if they wanted to develop in, I guess, other portions of the site. So this is our future land use designation map. The subject site and surrounds in the red are in the commercial designation. The land to the east in the light yellow colour is the agricultural designation, and then the land to the north and west in the darker yellow colour is the residential designation. So the future land use designation identifies what the land can generally be used for, and if changes are proposed, what those changes can be. The commercial designation does permit the light industrial commercial zone within the commercial designation, meaning that we can consider this application. So this is a hypothetical resolution map showing what the zoning of the area would look like in the event that the application was approved in its current form. So the M1 or light industrial commercial zone would extend from the neighbouring west property onto the subject site. So this is an image of the subject site taken from Parkway Drive looking south. I will note that the shipping containers in the rear here are in the approximate location of the proposed development. Again, noting that we're not giving consent for development, but this is just where, for, I guess, visual sake, to show where the proposed building would be. And again, this is looking west, again with those shipping containers being in the approximate location of where the proposed development would be. And then on the left-hand side of the screen, we can see that dike along the rear of the subject site. Again, this is looking back towards Parkway Drive from the rear of the site with the shipping containers in the approximate location of the proposed salt storage building. So this is looking at Parkway Drive, and we can see the existing self-storage facility and Suzuki dealership on the opposite side of the road. So in terms of public consultation, 21 property owners within 500 feet of the subject site were notified by letter mail prior to a public information meeting. A public information meeting was held on April 8th, 2025 at the Port Williams Community Centre. A notice of the public information meeting was also placed on the municipal social media on April 1st, 2025. 3 members of the public were in attendance at the meeting. A range of questions were asked, but generally the comments were positive in nature. The application was presented to the Port Williams Village Commission on September 16th, 2025, and no concerns were raised by the Village Commission in regards to the application. So, in terms of policy, Municipal Planning Strategy Policy 5.3.3 enables council to consider this application, and we need to consider the proposed development specified and if there are, if the proposed zone is enabled within the same designation. So as discussed previously, this application is for salt storage or bulk mineral storage, and the light industrial commercial zone is permitted within the commercial designation which covers the site. Further to this, Municipal Planning Strategy Policy 5.3.5 states the criteria to be met when considering an application to rezone land. So Council shall consider the zone placement policy, the proposed and permitted uses of the proposed zone, and the general criteria. So the proposed rezoning to the light industrial commercial M1 zone would permit a range of industrial and commercial uses which are not solely focused on sales or providing a service. Due to the site's location and the environmental overlays, the possible uses on the site would be pushed further to the rear of the site or limited in terms of their location, which would, for the most part, move them as far away from neighbouring or in proximity residential uses. The subject site is ideally located as it's set behind industrial uses, which would also provide a buffer between the subject site and existing residential uses in the area. In terms of the general criteria, the assessment of this application included sending the application to the Port Williams Fire Chief, Nova Scotia Department of Public Works, the Provincial Department of Agriculture, and the Municipal Manager of Inspections and Enforcement. No concerns were raised by the bodies of jurisdiction in regards to the proposal, and the application is considered to meet the intent of the municipal planning strategy and does not involve any cost to the municipality or the village of Port Williams. So, we received a completed application on the 20th of February 2025. A public information meeting was held on April 8th, 2025. Following a staff review, the application was presented to the Planning Advisory Committee on November 12th, 2025. The Planning Advisory Committee forwarded a positive recommendation to full Municipal Council at first reading on December 2nd. At the first reading, Municipal Council authorised a public hearing for this evening. Prior to this evening, properties within 500 feet of the subject site were once again notified by mail, and a notice was placed on social media. Following this evening's public hearing, there will be second reading where Municipal Council will make a decision on the application, and following that there is a 14-day appeal period. And I will now pass it back to you, Mr. Mayor, for comments and questions.
Thank you, Ms. Bowman. Just to explain to the public once again, Council sits as a quasi-judicial capacity for public hearings. And so it doesn't engage in debate and doesn't argue with the presenter. It is necessary, however, that everyone has a good sense of what's being presented. So we'll now go to the questions of clarification. If there is any misunderstanding of any part by any councillor. So at this time, is there any member of council that has any questions of clarification? I see no lights on, so I will move on to the public. Move to comments from the public. So is there any member of the public that wishes to address council on this matter? Please come to the mic and state your name and address for the record. As a reminder, there is a 5-minute maximum time limit per speaker. Please address your comments to council and not the presenter. So, I don't see anyone rushing to the mic, so I guess at this time there's no need for the staff to add any further clarification, and I thank you, Ms. Bowman. And we'll move on to our second item. Our second item on the agenda this evening is an application to rezone 1025 Sherman Belcher Road, PID 55325633, Centreville, from residential 1 unit R1 zone to residential mixed density R3 zone, file 25-12. Alice Jacob, one of our municipal planners, will be presenting. So, Ms. Jacob, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and good evening, everyone. As the Mayor mentioned, this application is for a land use bylaw map amendment at 1025 Sherman Belcher Road, Centreville. The red circle on the map is the approximate location of the property within the growth center of Centreville. And this is a subject property, which is approximately 2.2 acres. The axis, as we can see here, is from Sherman Belcher Road. There is an existing one-unit dwelling on the property located here. The property is mostly surrounded by residential dwellings to the east, west, and to the south. And to the north, these properties are undeveloped and vacant. Moving on to the proposal. So the applicant intends to build a multi-unit dwelling on this portion, the eastern portion of the property behind the existing dwelling. The multi-unit dwelling is proposed to look like a townhouse style dwelling. The subject property is currently located within the residential one-unit R1 zone, and the R1 zone does not permit multi-unit dwellings as of right. So the proposal is to rezone the property to the residential mixed density R3 zone, which would enable the proposed development. As for the zoning, the subject property and most of the surrounding properties are within the R1 zone, the residential one-unit zone. And we have an R2 zone here, which permits uses like one-unit dwellings, two-unit dwellings, and group dwellings. And then we have the R5 zone here, which is a comprehensive neighborhood development zone, which is meant for large-scale planned neighborhoods. And if we look at the property, there is also an ESA layer overlay applied to part of the property. This is because there is a river running along this portion of the property. And this is the land use designation map. The land use designation determines which zones and types of uses could be permitted in an area. The property and the surrounding neighboring properties are within the residential designation. So both the current zoning and the proposed zoning are permitted within the residential designation. And because both zones are enabled within the designation, council is able to consider this rezoning. Moving on to some photographs. This is a view of the existing driveway on the property and the existing dwelling. And a view of Sherman Belcher Road from the axis to the subject property. As we can see here, most of the surrounding uses are residential. And this is the view of the eastern portion of the property, this portion where the multi-unit dwelling is proposed. So with regards to public consultation, we had a public information meeting and we also received emails from the public. There were concerns about privacy. So the neighbor to the west has a swimming pool and he was concerned about his privacy. The applicant clarified that the multi-unit dwelling is proposed on the eastern portion of the property and wouldn't impact the privacy of the neighbor to the west. During the public information meeting, there were questions about the permitted height in the proposed zone. Both the R1 and the R3 zones permit the same height, which is a maximum of 35 feet. There were questions regarding the planning process, especially with regards to the timeline, and questions about the Brooks location on the property and whether the existing dwelling needs to be maintained. There were also questions about the well water, specifically with regards to the water quantity and how the proposal would impact the quantity. So staff reviewed the well data for the neighboring wells in the neighborhood, and it was found to have adequate quantity. There were also concerns regarding the potential impact of a future driveway on the drainage. So this is a subject property, and there is a drainage ditch running along the frontage of the property. During the public information meeting, the applicant mentioned a potential potential future plans for a new driveway on this portion of the property, on the western side of the property. And the public were concerned that the driveway might affect this drainage ditch and the overall drainage as a result. This is not within the scope of this application, but we did forward it to DPW for their comments, the province for their comments. And the province mentioned that they will review the drainage plans at the time of permitting. And I believe they also have specific requirements with regards to installation of culverts and ditches at the time of installing a new driveway, developing a new driveway. We also asked the applicant to submit a drainage plan, which was reviewed by the engineering department. The engineering department has requested the applicant to submit a stormwater management plan at the time of permitting. And in terms of the policy 5.3.3 is what enables this rezoning. It enables council to consider rezoning land from one zone enabled in a designation to another within the same designation. Both the residential 1-unit R1 zone and the R3 zone are permitted within the designation. As a result, council is able to consider this rezoning. And policy 5.3.5 is an additional policy that applies to all rezonings. Within this policy, we look at 3 criteria, whether the criteria A is whether the proposal is consistent with the intent of the proposed R3 zone, and B, whether the impacts of the proposed use and other permitted uses within the proposed zone are acceptable, and C, whether the proposal meets the general criteria. With regards to criteria A, so the intent, so lands located in the R3 zone are intended to provide a transition between areas of low density and high density. So in this case, the property is located between the R1 zone and the R5 zone. R1 zone is meant for low density residential development. It permits 1-unit dwellings and secondary suites and accessory dwellings. R5 zone, on the other hand, is meant for large-scale planned neighborhood development. So this could include a combination of 1-unit dwellings, high-density multi-unit dwellings, community facilities, and other recreational spaces. So it is staff's opinion that placing the R3 zone on the subject property would serve as a suitable transition between the R1 and the R5 zones. And the R3 zones are also placed on properties that would benefit from flexible development options. So the subject property is approximately 2.2 acres. And in the R1 zone, a 2.2 acre of area could accommodate up to 24 properties and meaning 24 dwellings. So in this case, the property with its 2.2 acres is just developed with a 1-unit dwelling, meaning the subject property is currently underutilized. So it is staff's opinion that the property could benefit from flexible development options such as group dwellings or multi-unit dwellings that is offered by the R3 zoning. This would help utilize the property better. And with regards to the impacts of the proposed use and other permitted uses within the proposed zone, with regards to non-residential uses, the current R1 zoning and the proposed R3 zone both permit the same types of non-residential uses. So the rezoning is not going to add additional non-residential uses, not going to enable additional non-residential uses. With regards to residential uses, the R3 zone permits additional building forms like 2-unit dwellings, group dwellings, semi-detached dwellings, multi-unit dwellings, and townhouses. Although the R3 zone permits these additional building forms, the additional uses are still residential in nature and would be compatible with the surrounding neighborhood residential uses. And the proposal is for a multi-unit dwelling. So in the R3 zone, multi-unit dwellings have additional requirements like increased side setbacks, amenity space requirements, additional parking space requirements, and also solid waste storage space requirements. And finally, criteria C, whether it meets the general criteria. So within this criteria, we looked into various aspects such as the proposal's consistency with the municipal planning strategy, the compatibility with surrounding land uses, financial impacts, adequacy of fire protection services, adequacy of sewer and water services, and various other aspects that are shown here. The proposal was found to be consistent with the relevant criteria within this policy. And finally, the process. We received this application in March. A public information meeting was held in April last year, and staff reviewed this application, and we prepared a report with a positive recommendation, which was presented to PAC on the 12th of November. PAC forwarded a positive recommendation to Council, and as a result, Council gave the application first reading in December and forwarded it to this public hearing. So we are currently at the public hearing, following which the application will go back to Council for a second reading and a final decision, following which it will enter a 14-day appeal period. And with that, I pass it back to Mr. Mayor for comments from the public.
Thank you, Ms. Jacob. Is there any questions of clarification from any of the councilors? Deputy Mayor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you, has the applicant said how many units are proposed for the multi-dwelling? Do we know that information?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, they did mention having 7 units, but they could have more than that. As depends on the zoning requirements and the area.
Okay, thank you. And second question, Mr. Mayor, if I may. I'm just wondering the grade of the land. Is the land relatively flat, or does it run down towards Sherman Belcher Road, or does it run to the east or to the west?
So through you, Mr. Mayor, this portion of the property is slightly lower than the road level, but this portion is a bit higher. I'm not really sure about this area, but it seems to be flat, this area, and this area seems to be flat.
Okay, thank you. And just one final question, if I may, Mr. Mayor. So my understanding is that at the time of permit, the developer or the applicant would be required to provide a storm drainage plan, and at that point it would be determined if that plan responds to the standard required for that development. Is that an accurate statement?
Through you, Mr. Mayor. So the drainage plan that the applicant submitted showed the existing conditions on the property and what the potential drainage would look like if the units were built. So this was reviewed by the engineering department, and they found that the post-development flow, that is once the building is constructed, the post-development flow might be greater than the pre-development flow. So they required the stormwater management plan. In the plan, they would have to show how they would contain this extra flow that would be created by the new development.
Thank you.
Okay. Councilor Gates.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Just for clarification, is modular construction acceptable building standards for R3 zoning?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I might have to pass that to my director or my manager.
Director Javert.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, modular homes, whether that's a mini home, whether that's a modular that creates 3 or 4 units, that's not something that's regulated through the land use bylaw. That would be building code, but yes, they would be permitted.
Thank you.
Okay. Don't see any other lights on, so at this time I'll move on to members of the public. So if there's any member of the public who would like to come forward and make any comments, now's the time to do so.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor. I'm one of the residents that live directly next to this property.
Can
I'm
we get-
heartbroken, to be
Can we
honest.
get your name
Oh,
and
I'm sorry.
address, please?
Karen Connell, 1017 Sherman Belcher
Okay,
Road.
Thank you.
We moved to this area because it was outside of the town limits, because it was a community that had one single, lots of property. It's quiet, it's peaceful. On top of that, we've invested a lot of money into our property. We built a pool with a hot tub. We have privacy back there. It's quiet. We enjoy our area. And the thought of this going from a zone 1 to a zone 3, that the builder states his plan is 7 dwellings, but is that 7 buildings? That could be 2 families in each one, so there's 14 new families. It could hold up to 48 dwellings. That's a lot of people adding into a property that currently only has 1 home. So you add that, you add the traffic. Most families have 2 vehicles. I don't want to insult anybody here. Everybody can do the math of how many cars this is going to add driving in and out next to our property, which our bedrooms are at. Not only that, so there's the cars, the quiet, the family that lives on the other side of this development also just put in a pool and have young children and have the privacy. It's just, anyway, I can't. A personal thing, I have allergies to fresh cut grass. As it is, I can't be outside when we have to cut our own grass or when either one of my neighbors cut their grass. If you add all these families that are going to be added in there, I'm basically confined to my home. That's not something that's going to affect anybody else, but that affects me personally. I'm curious what the purchase price of these homes that are being planned to be developed. It states that they're going to be using the existing driveway and then putting in the 7 units. What is being developed behind that then? That would be directly next to our property. I can't imagine them leaving an empty space there. So I'm trying to visualize what their plan is here and how they're going to have 7. And like I said, if that's the plan, it's 7, but once that's rezoned, they have the capabilities of putting up to 48. I don't know if anybody's familiar with the area, and if you've seen the size of this property, and the picture of even having 7 dwellings on there, let alone 48, is just unbelievable. So I just ask, if it was your neighborhood or if it was next door to you, where you've chosen to build your home, to live, would you want this being built next to you? Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Connell. Yes, sir.
Mr. Mayor, my name is Darren Henshaw. I live at 1013 Sherman Belcher, and I also own 1007 Sherman Belcher. And I don't believe this should be here. We are a good community. We are all, like everybody has their own families. I have 6 children, 2 grandchildren, a dog, and they all play in that backyard, in that field, and we're safe. We left Aldershot because you couldn't keep anything. If you had to nail your car down the driveway, because once you guys developed the other side, there was nothing left. So many people moved in, they were just stealing you blind. Then I'm very concerned about, they talk about the water table, our wells. Yes, that's all fun and games now. I lived this once before. They rebuilt TJ's. It wasn't very long after they built TJ's, my well in Aldershot went dry. So how can you tell me in a year's time we're still going to have lots of water with this many dwellings? That was the whole reason I moved to the country. This house, this property, 1013, has actually been in my wife's family for almost 80 years. And we would like to keep it, but I don't know. This is just something we're not really keen for. There's lots of other land in the valley. I've worked for Valley Tire for years. I've run the service truck. I've seen miles and miles and miles of land. Why do they need to put it in the middle of a really great community that everybody gets along with everybody? We all talk, we all help each other out, different situations. And I think this is just a bad idea all the way around. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Henshaw. Okay, I'll go back to Ms. Jacob in case she wants to respond to anything that the public has raised. Ms. Jacob, do you have any comments or?
I would like to add something, Mr. Mayor.
Okay,
So this image of this property, so the property owner could probably subdivide this property and that could end up in 3 lots, and each lot could have a 1-unit dwelling and 2 secondary suites within that dwelling, and each lot could also have an accessory dwelling. So this would come close to, I think, around 12 units, and they could have do that as of right if they subdivide that. Just wanted to add that.
so what you're saying is they could do at least 12 units without going through this process?
They would have to go through subdivision.
Right. Okay, thank you. All right, I'll go back to any member of council. Do you have any additional questions you'd like to ask to staff? Councillor Sappington.
Thank you. Through you, Mr. Mayor. Could you tell me more about the property behind, so above, what that was zoned for and what's allowed there, please?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, this property you mean? This is an R5 zoned area. It currently does not have anything. I believe it belongs to the applicant as well. I'm not sure what the future plans are.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Through you to Councillor Sappington, the R5 zone is our comprehensive neighborhood zone, so it's applied to very large residential properties, and all development occurs through a development agreement, because the idea is that the municipality is looking for the owners of properties like that to think comprehensively about its ultimate development, as opposed to developing it in a sort of piecemeal way, to ensure that the most efficient and most beneficial developments occur. At this time, we don't have an application on those lands, and we've not been in any discussions with the current owner on what he has in store, whether that's a short-term or long-term undertaking.
Okay. Councillor Allen.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Alice. This subject property, is it serviced by municipal sewer or municipal water?
I can't recall the details, but through you, Mayor, sorry. I believe it's serviced by municipal sewer, but not municipal water. They would have to rely on well water.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, I don't see any other lights on. So at this time, we'll move on to the third item on our agenda, is an application to amend the text of land use bylaw to add a car wash facility to the list of permitted uses in the rural commercial C4 zone, file 2514. It will also be presented by Ms. Jacob. So the floor is yours again, Ms. Jacob.
Mr. Mayor? This application is for a text amendment to add car wash facilities to the list of permitted uses in the rural commercial C4 zone. So being a text amendment, this is not a site-specific application. A text amendment would apply to all areas where the amended regulations would apply. However, this application was prompted by a site-specific proposal. So the applicant intends to develop a car wash facility on a property located in South Berwick. The property is located within the rural commercial C4 zone, and car wash facilities are not a permitted use within the C4 zone. So the proposal is to amend the text of the land use bylaw to permit car wash facilities within the C4 zone, so the applicant could have a car wash facility on their property. A bit of background about C4 zone. The rural commercial C4 zones are permitted within the rural areas in the municipality. It was established to enable commercial uses that serve the needs of the rural residents and to also acknowledge the existing commercial uses. So it permits a variety of commercial uses. So these are some of the commercial uses that are currently permitted within the zone. As we can see here, it permits uses like automotive repair, business offices, community facilities, educational facilities, restaurants, medical and dental clinics, and a few other commercial uses. So the proposal is to add car wash facility to this list of permitted uses. The reason we have to go process this through a text amendment instead of a rezoning or a development agreement is because the municipal planning strategy lacks policies to enable the development of car wash facilities through a rezoning or a development agreement in the rural areas. So if council approves this text amendment, the amendment would apply to all C4 zones, but the municipality currently does not have a lot of C4 zones. C4 zones are usually not pre-zoned because of unpredictable demand. New C4 zones are only created through rezonings on an as-needed basis. So these are the existing C4 zones within the county. That is, the pink markings within these circles are the existing C4 zones. So the amendment would apply to all those C4 zones and any other future C4 zones that are created. So this is a summary of a public consultation. There were a few concerns and comments. There were concerns about the impact of the use on water supply and impact on well water and farming operations in rural areas. And there were questions about the compatibility of car wash facilities in rural areas. There were also suggestions to consider the proposal on a case-by-case basis rather than a text amendment. But as I mentioned earlier, we do not have policies that would enable it through a rezoning or a development agreement. And there were also suggestions to include specific requirements considering the impact of the use on water quantity. There were also questions about whether the amendment would apply to all existing and future C4 zones. The amendment would apply to all the existing and future C4 zones that are created through rezonings. So coming to the policy review, policy 5.3.2 is what enables this text amendment. It enables council to consider text amendment provided the amendment is consistent with the vision, goals, and objectives of the MPS. So some of the relevant visions, goals, and objectives. So C4 zones are permitted within rural areas, and the intent of the rural areas is to contain primarily agricultural resource uses and related industries, rural commercial uses, and rural industries. And the intent of the rural commercial zone is to contain commercial businesses serving the rural community and visitors. A car wash facility would be a commercial use that would be similar to all the other commercial uses that are currently permitted within the C4 zone. Also, permitting a car wash facility would benefit rural residents as they wouldn't have to travel all the way to the growth centers to access a car wash facility. So it is staff's opinion that the proposal would be consistent with these objectives. With regards to agricultural designation and resource designation, the objectives are to prioritize agricultural and resource uses over other land uses. So the number of C4 zones, as I said earlier, in the county is limited due to the priority given to agricultural and resource uses. The amendment is not going to change this. The amendment just aims to add an additional use to the list of currently permitted uses within the C4 zone, meaning property owners will have an additional option that they could develop on their C4 zone properties. With regards to economic development, the objective is to help diversify the economic base, promote entrepreneurship, and encourage new business development. And with regards to infrastructure, it is to make efficient use of existing rural road networks. It is staff's opinion that the proposal will be consistent with those objectives. And with regards to drinking water, agriculture, and rural and natural areas, the intent is to protect and maintain the quality and quantity of groundwater and to protect agricultural land and minimize impact on sensitive natural features, which we believe the proposal would not be consistent with, and I will explain that in the coming slides. So with regards to impact on water quality, agriculture, and natural and rural areas, so C4 zones, as I said, are permitted within the rural areas. C4 zones are mostly serviced by septic system and well water. So a car wash facility, if permitted in the C4 zone, would have to be serviced by a septic system. And I will first start with the basics of a septic system. So a septic system, the wastewater from the car wash facility would go to a septic tank where the solids from the wastewater would settle, and the effluent from the septic tank would eventually drain into the drain field of the septic system, from where it goes into the ground. So our concern is that there would be large volumes of wastewater going into the septic system. So on-site septic systems are meant to treat septic and sewage and not chemical waste. So the wastewater might potentially contain harmful chemicals that would end up in the drain field of a septic system, which would eventually drain into the ground. And this might potentially lead to pollution, impacting the neighboring agricultural uses, neighboring natural features, and other neighboring wells and the neighboring residents in general. So septic systems are not regulated by the municipality, it's regulated by the province. We reached out to them for their guidance and feedback. So the province mentioned that they do not have any specific regulations with regards to car wash septic systems, so they lack any upfront regulations that would prevent potential contamination. And they mentioned that the onus is on the property owners to treat or dispose of the wastewater from the car wash facility. With regards to that, they recommended a few options. So property owners may install oil or grease separators, sedimentation tanks, biological systems, or advanced technologies. But these are not a requirement. They are just options that the property owners could install. And the province also mentioned that it is a property owner's responsibility to maintain the systems and prevent any adverse impacts. If there are any adverse impacts because of the use, and if the province receives a complaint about any adverse impacts, they would deal with that complaint through the Environment Act. So the Environment Act requires property owners to prevent the release of harmful substances into the environment. So they would deal with any complaints through the Environment Act. And they also mentioned that property owners may implement best practices, and they recommended a few best practices like recycling systems, high pressure nozzles, use of biodegradable chemicals, spill prevention, waste handling, and stormwater management. Again, these are not requirements. These are just options that property owners could implement if they are environment conscious. This was also one of their comments regarding PFAs. So PFAs are human-made chemicals which are known as forever chemicals. They do not break down easily, and they pollute the environment, and they can also build up in people, leading to health concerns. So I will read this out. A key concern with car washes is the potential use of PFAs containing products like soaps, waxes, polishes, which may end up in discharged wastewater. This is particularly important in areas relying on private wells or municipal well fields, such as parts of the Annapolis Valley. These discharges should be considered in groundwater and source water protection planning. So, source water protection planning. Our municipal wells are protected by source water documents called the source water protection plans, and based on these plans we have established certain well field overlays which usually include various zones. So this image on the screen shows a general representation of a well field overlay. Zone A typically restricts most uses, including car washes. In some well fields, Zone B does not permit car washes, but in others, it is permitted as of right, or it is permitted through a development agreement, depending on the well field. So if it is permitted through a development agreement, applicants are required to submit a risk assessment report evaluating the impact on groundwater quality and quantity, and they are also required to submit management plans and establish controls to minimize groundwater contamination. And Zone D, in most of the well fields, Zone D permits car washes. So with regards to the minimum distance of a car wash from a municipal well, most well fields, the distance from a municipal well to Zone B is 200 feet. And from a municipal well to Zone C could range from 200 feet to 1,500 feet. So with regards to private wells, it is my understanding that they do not have such protections or overlays. The only regulations they have with regards to private wells are the setback requirements. So the distance of a septic system from a drilled well is 50 feet, and the distance of a septic system from a dug well is 100 feet. And to explain these differences further, so let's consider a scenario where this property in Gaspro is rezoned to the C4 zone for a car wash facility. In this case, so if there is a private well here on the neighboring property, the septic system of this car wash will have to be at least 50 feet from the drilled well, or if it is a dug well, it has to be about 100 feet from the dug well. However, if this was a municipal well, or if the municipal level of protection were applied to this private well, the requirements would be more stringent, as you can see here. A car wash wouldn't be permitted within the 200 feet of the private well or the municipal well. And within this Zone B, they may be permitted or permitted through a development agreement, or maybe not permitted at all, depending on the well field. So coming back to private wells, the province has additional regulations. So the province has something called the Activities Designation Regulations, which identifies activities that might cause contamination or that might cause pollution. So these activities require approval from the province. So some examples of activities include fertilizer manufacturing plant, pesticide manufacturing plant, petroleum storage tank system, and crematoriums. So these uses are currently permitted within our C4 zone, meaning even though we permit it, if someone were to develop one of these facilities, they would have to get an approval from the province before they develop that facility. So car washes, they do not have any specific triggers within these regulations. As a result, they wouldn't have to get an approval from the province in order to develop a car wash on a property. And we also reviewed this application against the general criteria. The proposal did not have a conflict with any municipal or provincial programs, bylaws, or regulations. It does not have any financial impact on the municipality, but we are concerned about the land use compatibility of the proposal, and we are concerned that the proposal might have negative impacts on groundwater supplies and may cause pollution in the area and negative impacts on neighboring lakes or neighboring wetlands and also neighboring farming operation. As a result, it is our opinion that it is not consistent with the intent of the municipal planning strategy. So as a final note, if the amendment gets approved and if we receive a rezoning application in the future, maybe the rezoning could be for a different use, such as a daycare facility, or maybe it is for another less intensive use. But when we are reviewing the application for rezoning, we would assess the impacts of the proposed use and also the other permitted uses within the zone, like car washes, on the surrounding neighborhood. And if the potential impact of the car wash are found to be unacceptable, we may recommend against the rezoning application, even if the proposed rezoning is for a daycare facility or is for a less impactful use. And finally, the process. We received this application in March. A public information meeting was held in May last year, and staff reviewed this application, and we prepared a report with a negative recommendation, which was presented to PAC on November 12th. PAC reviewed the application and made a negative recommendation to Council. Council gave the application first reading in December and forwarded it to a public hearing, this public hearing. We are currently at the public hearing, following which the application will go back to Council for a final decision, and the application will then enter a 14-day appeal period. And that concludes the presentation. I pass it back to Mr. Mayor for comments from councilors and the public.
Thank you again, Ms. Jacob. And so, is there any questions of clarification by any counselor to Ms. Jacob? Counselor Lutz.
Thank you, Mayor. Through you to Ms. Jacobs. Just to clarify one thing you said, so you noted that should this proceed and car washes be included as a permitted use in C4, it could theoretically have implications for other rezonings down the road. So other uses that could be less impactful in the community. Am I understanding that correctly? And then I have a follow-up if I'm understanding that correctly.
Through you, Mr. Mayor. I think you got it right. If we are to permit, if the text amendment gets approved, and if car washes are added to the list of permitted uses, and if in the future we get a rezoning proposal, say a rezoning from A2 to C4 for maybe a restaurant or a daycare facility or maybe just a community facility, we would have to, while reviewing the application, we would have to look at the impact of the proposed use, which is a daycare, and also all the other permitted uses within the zone, which would include a car wash. And if we find that the use has negative impacts on the neighborhood or it doesn't meet the policies, then we might have to make a negative recommendation.
Okay, and just a quick follow-up if I could, Mr. Mayor. And then is within the C4 zone, it's a relatively specific zone. Is there a lot of overlap in the different uses between C4 and the other zones? So let's say you use the example of a restaurant. Could someone rezone to a different zone that's not C4 that would have different lists of permitted uses that would give them a better chance of a positive recommendation? So something instead of C4 into an M1 or a C1, would there be lots of options, I guess, for other zones other than C4 that wouldn't be impacted by this potential car wash activity situation? Could a daycare facility or a restaurant, is there a lot of duplication between zones, alternative zones that wouldn't allow car washes, for example, that someone could rezone to where this wouldn't affect their application?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Lutz. One of the things we tried to do in drafting the new documents was to reduce the number of zones. When you reduce the number of zones, you reduce the amount of nuance that's there. So this is the only rural commercial zone we have. We don't have a whole lot of overlap in the uses permitted in this zone. Most of these uses are not permitted in other rural zones. So this is the only option at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Hiltz.
Thank you, Mayor, through you. Thanks for the presentation, Ms. Jacob. Just a question. Sorry for my voice. I've got a bit of a cold. Whereabouts would the septic field be on that property? And I believe the property is 4308 Trunk 1, South Berwick. Is that correct?
Sorry about that. I think I turned it off when you turned it on. Through Mr. Mayor to Councillor Hiltz, this is a text amendment. The specifics of the property that prompted this application are not within the scope of what we're considering tonight. Moreover, septic systems are not regulated by the municipality. We don't control their location or installation. That would be the responsibility of the province. So we are not aware of where a proposed septic system would be installed on this property prompting the application.
Okay, thank you.
Deputy Mayor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just a few brief questions. I think I heard we don't have policies that allow a rezoning or developmental agreements in C4 zones based on our municipal planning strategy. I'm just curious as to whether or not our municipal planning strategy would be congruent or consistent with planning strategies across the province. So basically what I'm saying is that if this applicant were requesting in a different municipality in a C4 zone, would the answer probably be the same as they're getting here in the municipality of Kings County, or potentially could get?
Through Mr. Mayor to Deputy Mayor McPherson. That's a very good question. Every municipality is different. Every municipality is responsible for their own planning documents. So it's a bit of a mixed bag. There are some municipalities that permit them. There are some that don't. My understanding is there aren't that many facilities that have been developed across the province in rural areas. So, but I would say there's not a whole lot of consistency there.
Thank you very much. As a follow-up, if I may, Mr. Mayor, could you bring up the slide that does show what is permitted commercially within C4 zones? I think there's quite an extensive list. So if I'm understanding process properly, when the municipal planning strategy was developed, and probably with amendments to it through various councils throughout the years, these are the commercial entities that over time are permitted in those areas, in that area, in that zoning. Is that accurate, how that would have come to be?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor McPherson, you're only the second council using these documents.
Okay.
So it's not been many councils that have led to many amendments, but in theory, your statement is correct, yes.
Okay. What I'm getting at, I guess, is I'm wondering how this list was established. Why this list? When I look at this list, I see a wide range of commercial potentials, and maybe even, you know, the potential for, you know, environmental issues or whatever. And I understand the concern. Thank you for the presentation. It was clear as to why the runoff, wastewater runoff of a car wash is a concern. I'm just wondering how this list was established and whether or not there could have been or may still be concerns about current permitted commercial uses in a C4 zone.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor McPherson. So this list was developed further to Councillor Lutz's question earlier. We reviewed the previous list of rural commercial zones and basically consolidated them. With regards to uses on this list that may result in some environmental concern, the big one in my mind is a gas bar, for example. That has additional approvals that come from other authorities. So Alice mentioned that when a gas bar goes in, there's an additional approval because it's seen as a heavy contaminant, as it should be. So there's someone else ensuring that that's installed correctly, maintained correctly, gets its regular licensing correctly. That's not the case with a car wash. There's no other jurisdiction sort of looking out for the environment. The Environment Act is reactive, not proactive, so something bad needs to happen, which to me, the worst thing that could happen related to the car wash would be that a neighboring well is contaminated because once petrochemicals enter a well, that well is no longer viable. And with the nature of well field overlays, we saw that with sort of the bullseye that Ms. Jacob put up. Those are related to time of travel. So that's related to how long it would take a contaminant to get from the source of the contamination to the well, which means that if a residential well is contaminated, there's no guarantee that there's another viable location on that property for a well. That's pretty serious, I think.
May, Mr. Mayor, just one final question. And you just referenced other agencies and maybe some restrictions or controls. And in the presentation, we talked about the NSECC, or the Department of Environment provincially, and they have no requirements. They don't enforce those types of things. Unfortunately, it's after the fact, if there's an issue, that they become involved. But I do recall quite a lengthy list of prescribed or recommendations or recommended restrictions from the presentation, which brings me to the question of, if it is our municipal planning strategy, is there not an avenue in which we could create the restrictions? We could take a look at this and say, okay, we would add the use of a car wash or permit of a car wash in the C4 zone, but only under these specific restrictions. Is that not a possibility?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Deputy Mayor McPherson, not really, because the Municipal Government Act outlines the elements that can be contained within a land use bylaw. The design or functionality of a car wash or any of our land uses are not listed in that. We don't have the ability to similar to Councillor Hiltz's question, we don't have the ability to regulate the location of a septic field. For example, the things we can control are location of buildings in relation to other uses and in relation to lot lines. Our tools are fairly limited, and they're not nuanced. So the suggestions from NSECC related to recycling water and other things, I don't recall now, those would not be within. They would not be something we could put into a land use bylaw or a development agreement and ultimately enforce.
Thank you for your patience. Thank you.
Councillor Sappington.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So am I understanding correctly that all of those do have, I guess, an alarm that will kick in regards to, like, let's say, a funeral home or a medical clinic? If I was to want to open one of those, then there would be an automatic check, and you would be alerted to make sure those regulations were in place, environmental regulations.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sappington, not every one of those uses is considered a potential source of significant contamination. A medical clinic is not really a significant source of contamination of you know, a well field, for example. It's those uses that would be considered heavy polluters that do have those extra checks and balances. So not every use does, but the ones that, like gas bars, auto repair, those have additional requirements from the province.
Follow-up question, Mr. Mayor. So I know we were talking about well water, but also I have, with our sewer system issues, you're also concerned that, especially with like lagoon systems, that the water running into the ground could affect the sewer system as well. Like,
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Sappington, we only generally have sewer systems within growth centers, and the C4 zone is not enabled in growth centers, so that's somewhat outside the scope of this application.
Councillor Hiltz.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I think it's important to point out, I believe there are also some federal laws here that do cover. For instance, here it's Canadian Environmental Protection Act. Phosphate-based detergents are banned to protect aquatic ecosystems. Phosphate-free biodegradable soaps have already been industry standard for many years. Excuse me. Also, National Plumbing Code of Canada. So Oil interceptors are mandatory for any facility discharging oil sediments, including car washes, garages, and undercoating bays, required whether the system drains to municipal sewer or private septic field.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, to Councillor Hiltz, yes, that is correct. We did look into the plumbing code. However, that is only at the time of development. There is, the municipal building officials are the ones that ensure that the plumbing and building codes are met at the time of development. There is not an individual on staff, nor is the municipality required to ensure that those oil grit separators or other, mitigation measures that might be installed are operating the way they're meant to be, that they are being maintained in the way they're meant to be, and that contaminants are being captured before being released into the septic tank and field. So that's where staff's hesitation to recommend approval on this particular use emanates from.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I don't see any other lights on, so at this time we would go to the members of the public. And if there's any member of the public that would like to come forward and have any questions or comments to the staff, they're welcome to do so. And please state your name and address, and you have up to 5 minutes to talk.
Good evening. My name is McCall Robinson, 4308 Highway 1, Berwick. I'm the one who submitted the application. There's a couple things I want to mention. I do find it kind of funny that staff is comfortable cramming as many dwellings on a property and not concerned about water there, but they are with a car wash. Just doing some quick math, 12 units on a property would use about 800,000 gallons a year. The car wash that we would put in would probably use about the same as that or slightly more. So that's something to consider, especially with a lot of those dwellings would be also on just well water. So the other thing I want to mention too, the automotive sales and rental, if you actually look up the definition of that, already permits car washing and detailing. Mind you, it wouldn't be at the same scale, but I would assume there'd be things that they'd have to do as well with the wash water from that. We'd already be permitted in this C4 zone to do washing of vehicles directly into the environment, where a car wash facility actually would have to have an oil water separator in to take away all the contaminants or that may come off the vehicle. As Councillor Hiltz pointed out, biodegradable soaps are industry standard. You can't buy soaps for vehicles that contain harmful chemicals. The Department of Environment doesn't allow that. They don't want those chemicals going into the environment, so that's not a concern. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I want to say. I've sent you guys lots of emails, so I've had researched this so much that I don't think I could get through all of it tonight anyways, but those were just a couple of things I wanted to mention. Greenhouses don't really have any regulation behind them as well, so they can put fertilizers, sprays, all into the environment. There's lots of things that the county can't really control in the C4 zone with many of those permitted uses. We could do undercoating, we could do, so I think, they're trying to paint a picture that car washes are really bad. Yes, there's concerns with car washes, there's concerns with a lot of those things on C4 zones. And yes, they don't have control over all of them. That's the reality of it. But I'm just pointing out that a touchless car wash really aligns with a lot of the things that are already on there, and the same concerns arise with that as they do with automotive sales and service, automotive repair, greenhouses, gas bars, funeral homes, heavy equipment facilities. All of these have concerns as well that, yes, there's always going to be potential, but I don't think the potential with a car wash is any worse or greater than any of these other uses. So that's about all I have to say tonight.
Okay,
And
thank you. Anyone else from the public? So at this time, I'll ask Ms. Jacob, is there anything that the public has raised that you'd like to comment on?
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I don't. Thank you.
No? Okay. I do have a question to you, Ms. Jacob, or to staff. Is it possible, and I know that I'm maybe getting ahead of myself because we deal with it at the next council meeting coming up, but is it possible that if we put a regulation in that the car wash was permitted, but they'd have to have a system where they catch their water and haul it away so that it's not going to go into the groundwater well field area, because apparently we're talking about Berwick's well water protection area, and that's where the car wash would be. So I'm getting ahead of myself a little bit, because then I would suggest to council we could maybe make an amendment or something, but I know that this is not the time for that. But my question would be, if we did that later on, is it not possible to put a regulation in there that water has to be collected before it goes out into the ground?
To you, Mr. Mayor, in short, no, we could not draft a regulation that dictates how the water is handled. That, again, would be through the septic system, which is regulated through the province. In terms of the overall operation of the car wash, we don't have the ability to specify touchless car wash or a self-serve car wash like the one we have just down the road, wherever that direction is. Sorry, I get turned around in the building. We don't have the ability to dictate those types of things, because ultimately in the hypothetical situation you've described, if that car wash operator was required to capture the water and take it somewhere else or otherwise treat it, and they weren't doing that, that would very likely, or if they were somehow mismanaging and releasing pollution into the environment, that would fall under the jurisdiction of the Environment Act, not a municipal bylaw or policy. It would be outside our own jurisdiction. So, and the Municipal Government Act does not indicate that we can draft those types of regulations in a land use bylaw or development agreement. So unfortunately, no, we would not be able to draft a regulation like that.
Director Javert, did you have a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Just building on really both your question and Ms. Moser's response, what we do have, the tool that we do have within our planning documents is adding conditions to certain uses. So an example could be rural home occupation, so somebody looking to do an automotive home-based business. Our current documents require that that business be at least 200 feet away from an adjacent residential structure. So not having fully fleshed that out, council certainly could send this back to staff to look at, are there conditions within the use that we could add to the land use bylaw as part of the as of right development, whether that's a separation distance, a setback, or some other kind of limitation to the use, using the tools that we've got.
That's kind of where I was going.
Okay.
Maybe that's something that with a little bit more time down the road, something could be a little more thought. And I do have one more question, and I'll I ask it now while you're there, Director Javerick. And my other question would be, the comment from the public came back that it would be the same amount of water going into septics, into wells as if there was a 12-unit apartment building. Taking that as correct, my question is that the same type of water that's going to go into the ground area as what a car wash? Like, you know, if I was putting my apartment water into the ground, is that the same water as the soapy water that comes from a car wash? However, the applicant did mention that you know, you have to, in this day and age, the types of soap that have to be biodegradable. But my question is, would there make much difference between that and the water coming from a 12-unit apartment building? Type of water I'm talking about, not amount. I'm sort of granting that the applicant knows what he's talking about. It would be about the same amount, because he would know his business more so than I.
Through you, Mr. Mayor, I guess there's a couple of questions in there. Staff's issue, and where we tried to separate this, it's while a car wash will use likely a fair bit more water than the typical residential use. One issue, for sure, where our focus is more about the effluent coming from the use. And our concern is that it would exceed what would normally occur in a rural residential lot.
I see. Okay, thank you. All right. Well, I guess we've, I don't see any other lights on. We've beat this around, and I want to thank the members of the public that have responded, and also our staff for the thorough job that they've done here. So if there's being no other matters to come before the public hearing, I declare the public hearing adjourned, and note that for the public's information that these items will be on the agenda at the council meeting directly following this hearing for the second reading, and certainly everyone is welcome to stay. Wish you would put your light on a little sooner there, Councillor Gates. You know, when we're wrapping up, it's kind of nice to. All right, Councillor Gates.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Mr. Mayor. One comment that I might add with regards to any chemicals of concern that would be filtered through the soil. Typically, well, I'm not an agrologist, of course, but typically it gets filtered through gravel anywhere from 2 to 6 feet, which means that water would be drinkable at the end of that. So I'm just wondering when we're looking and talking about soil and chemicals being filtered out of it, but typically we found that after 6 feet any water would be drinkable, and I'm just weighing in with that a little bit. Thank
Is that why those apple crisps taste so good? Am I allowed to adjourn that hearing now? All right, I'm going to declare the public hearing adjourned, and we'll move on to the council meeting. But thank you, Councillor Gates, for your comments. All right, we call the council meeting of Tuesday, January the 6th, 2026 to order, and I declare that all members of council that are present, and I would ask any member of council if they would wish to excuse themselves for declare a conflict of interest. Councillor Peckford.
Yes, thank you, Mayor. I'd like to declare a conflict of interest on item 6C.
Okay. All right. Thank you, Councillor. Anyone else? No? All right. So we'll move forward with our agenda with duly noting that Councillor Peckford is declaring a conflict of interest on 6C. At this time, I'd like to read the land acknowledgement. The municipality of the County of Kings is in Mi'kma'ki, the ancestral, unceded, current territory of the Mi'kmaq peoples. The municipality of the County of Kings is a neighbor to the Annapolis Valley First Nation and Glooscap First Nation, as well as a diverse urban and rural indigenous population. We are all treaty people and commit to upholding the peace and friendship treaties and working towards reconciliation in all areas of the municipality. And before we go to the agenda, I would like to take a moment to pay tribute to Dr. Geraldine Browning, who sadly passed away last week. Dr. Browning, or as Mrs. B, as she was fondly known by many, was a remarkable leader, educator, mentor, and woman of deep faith whose life of service profoundly shaped our community and our province. She was a founding member of the Black Cultural Society of Nova Scotia, who described her as a lifelong champion of Black heritage, a community advancement, and human rights. Dr. Browning also helped establish the Black Business Initiative and the Valley African Nova Scotia Development Association, and served on numerous boards and committees advancing human rights, equity, and community development. She was named a member of the Order of Nova Scotia for her tireless efforts to foster understanding, dignity, and opportunity for all Nova Scotians. She also received an honorary doctorate of humanities degree from Acadia University in recognition of her lifelong contributions as a teacher, nurse, mentor, and community builder. She treated people with dignity, respect, and compassion, leading by example and offering encouragement and wisdom to all of those around her. Dr. Browning's family and friends will miss her deeply. We hope they find comfort in the immense love she had for them and the lives that she's touched, and the legacy of faith, kindness, and service she leaves behind. Dr. Browning was an icon, a great champion for everyone, and her passing is a great loss to the community. She was a lifetime supporter and friend of the municipality. On behalf of the Municipal Council and staff, I thank her for the lasting impact she has made on our community and on Nova Scotia. I would ask you to please join me in a moment of silence for Dr. Geraldine Browning, a legend in our community. Thank you. Now we will move on to the agenda. So the first part, I would ask for a motion to approve the agenda, please. I'll get you to use the light system, guys. I don't know what you did when I wasn't here and the deputy mayor was running the show, but I'm here now, so. So do we have a mover for the, use the light system, please? Like, how come your fault? Oh, darn, I thought it was Everett's. All right. I see those hands again. Was it moved by Deputy Mayor McPherson, second by Councillor Gates? All those in favor, I guess we're going to have to do it the old way. Signify by saying aye, please. Aye. Contrary minded, nay. Oh, okay. So now we can use the lights. You've just tested me, aren't you? Huh? Just, yeah. Happy New Year, Dave. Okay. All those in favor, please vote accordingly. What? I vote in favor, too. Councillor Best vote in favor? All right. So, motion carried. It was unanimous. Oh, man. Holy Lord. Sometimes you wish you had stayed in Florida. Disclosure of conflict of interest. We've already done that. So now we'll move on to the minutes of December the 2nd, 2025. Is there any errors or omissions in the December the 2nd meeting? No? Can I get a motion to approve the minutes, please? Can't we use the lights now? All right. So I'm waiting for a couple of lights here. Lights. All right. You guys changed things up since I was away or what? Moved by Councillor Sappington, second by Councillor Hardy. All right. All those in favor, please vote accordingly. Maybe I'm just getting old and forgetful, am I? Never mind, Hiltz. Motion carried. All right. All right, now December the 16th, the special council meeting. Was there any errors or omissions? Anyone noted in that? No? Okay, can I get a motion to approve those? Moved by Councillor Allen, second by Councillor Hiltz. All those in favor signify or vote accordingly. Rusty after playing golf for a few weeks. Motion carried. Okay. Business arising from December the 2nd. Is there any business arising from the minutes of December the 2nd? No? All right. How about December 16th? Is there any business arising from December 16th minutes? No? Good. We'll move on to planning. The planning committee recommendations, our chair of the PAC, Councillor Lutz, will read the recommendations. The first one is an application to rezone 1184 Parkway Drive, PID 55037063, Port Williams, file 2508. Councillor Lutz, please.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion reads that Municipal Council gives second reading to the application to rezone 1184 Parkway Drive, PID 55037063, Port Williams, from the General Commercial C1 zone to the Light Industrial Commercial M1 zone, as described in Appendix C of the report dated November 12th, 2025. I so move.
Okay. And second by Councillor Allen. All right, so, any further discussion? No? All right, all those in favor or against, please vote accordingly. Okay, motion carried. The second one is 6B, application to rezone 1025 Sherman Belcher Road, PID 55325633, Centreville, file 25-12.
Thank you, Mayor.
Councilor Lutz.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion reads that Municipal Council gives second reading to the application to rezone 1025 Sherman Belcher Road, PID 55325633, Centreville, from the residential 1 unit R1 zone to the residential mixed density R3 zone, as described in Appendix D of the report dated November 12th, 2025. I so move.
Okay, and we have a second by Councilor Allen, or I'm sorry, Councilor Peckford. So, all those for or against, please vote accordingly. My light's not coming on. Oh,
Oh,
what?
just that you didn't ask for debate, I think, is probably there was no call for debate.
No call for call for the question again? What? Okay, yeah. I'm moving a little fast, aren't I? Yeah. All right. So we got the mover and the seconder. Moved by Councilor Lutz, second by Councilor Peckford. I have to apologize because I'm a little rusty. I'm still playing golf in Florida, but anyway. So it's open now for debate. Any comments? Councilor Lutz, you got any comment?
Yeah, just a little debate if I could, Mayor.
Okay.
And no one blames you. With the amount of cheesecake I ate over the break, I'm surprised I even made it to the building today. So don't worry, we're all rusty. So I will be, this is not a straightforward vote, I don't think, for council when you have a public hearing prior to the meeting and you have folks from the community that are upset about a proposed application. I think it's worthwhile to have a discussion about why folks feel the way they feel and the way they're voting. And so for me, I will be voting in favor of this motion, and I'm the chair of PAC, so I heard the presentation at the initial meeting, and then, of course, through committee of the whole, and then through public hearing today. It's not an easy decision to make to vote in that way, and it's also not an easy decision to vote against a proposal like this, because all of our rules that we as council uphold and support and try to make adjudications on really do say that this is the type of property and this is the type of neighborhood that we wish to add density in a reasonable way to. And so therefore, because our planning documents really sort of insist that this is a type of consideration that we do consider, I think to deny an application like this would probably be difficult to defend when we know that a rezoning like this is and acceptable in pretty well all of these cases for R1. So I do feel that 7 units, with looking at the density of the area and the amount of properties that are sort of already supported in that area, that this isn't too big a burden for this one particular property. And considering that, alternatively, should the property be subdivided and developed in a different way, which when someone owns that property, someone wants to develop that property, really they have to follow our rules to do that. This, in my mind, having read through the information, actually is a lower impact development then should we deny this development and then have it be subdivided into 3 and then develop with multi-units on 3 separate lots? So that's why I'm voting in that way, and that's how I feel about it. So, thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lutz. Anyone else wish to comment? Deputy Mayor McPherson.
Thank you, Mayor Gorkum. Through you, thank you very much, Councilor Lutz, for those comments. I think that it's very important to acknowledge the fact that these are not easy decisions to make. My concern is wastewater runoff or surface water runoff, I mean, and how that will be dealt with. And my understanding this evening from staff is that that happens at the permit level. We certainly, all of us, want to protect the privacy that we have in existing land use. And sometimes it's very challenging and difficult when we have applications to change that. And this is a considerable change. So I understand the emotion and maybe opposition coming from the community. At the same time, we're living in somewhat of a housing crisis, and I know the area quite well. I guess you make a decision whether you can live with a 7-unit dwelling or the potential of having 12 units on that same piece of property. The other thing I look at is that bridge between the R1 zone, which is on the Sherman Belcher side, and the R5. That R3 zone in the middle kind of gives a good transition between the two. So I as well will be supporting the proposal for those reasons, and clearly understanding and thanking the community members who did come in with their concerns.
Okay, thank you, Deputy Mayor. Any other councilor wish to comment? Okay. All right, it's been moved and seconded. So all those in favor or against, please vote accordingly. Motion carried. Okay. We'll move on to item 6C, application to add a car wash facility as permitted in rural commercial C4 zones, and wait for the deputy or councilor. So, Councilor Lutz.
Thank you, Mayor. The motion reads that Municipal Council gives second reading to the application to amend the text of the land use bylaw to add car wash facilities to the list of permitted uses in the rural commercial C4 zone as described in Appendix A of the report dated November 12th, 2025. I so move.
Second by Councilor Best. All right, so we're open for further debate. One suggestion I would make, because I can't make a motion myself here from the chair, but you might want to consider the conversation that I had with Director Javerick, and you could move that this is been tabled to another month, and maybe then some requirements or new requirements might be considered. They may not be. I think Ms. Mosier talked quite extensively with her background, but at least it would give a little more time. I know that's not what an applicant would want to hear, but give a little more time for reconsideration because we are opening ourselves up maybe for liability, but the question is it really that much liability? So I just want to throw that out because I can't make the motion that somebody, if you're not totally comfortable with voting on this, we might be able to table it and look at it down the road in another month after more information. Deputy Mayor McPherson.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you for articulating clearly what I was thinking and the reason why I put my light on. I feel at this time that the wise approach may be that, I guess what I'm saying is that I'd like to make a motion that we send this back to staff once again, and that staff work on conditions that would permit us potentially to support the establishment of a car wash in South Berwick.
So would
But
you like to table this until?
That's my
until
motion.
When? Next month?
my motion is to send it back, table it, send it back to staff
All right.
to develop some
Is
conditions.
there a second for that? Second by Counselor Allen. Okay, we are currently now be voting on the tabling motion. All those in favor or against to table this motion for 1 month, please signify accordingly. There's no debate in the tabling motion, so. Did I get that one right? Finally. All right, motion carried. So this application is tabled until next month council meeting, at which time staff can come back with if there's further requirements or regulations that we can put on this that we might feel a little more comfortable. Okay, clerk, I see your light's on.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I just wanted to point out, because the original motion was moved and seconded, it should be withdrawn, which the mover of the motion would be able to do
Okay, so do we
with
have
approval of the
approval
seconder.
from the mover and the seconder to withdraw the first motion? Okay, and Councilor Best, I believe, was the seconder. You're okay with that? Okay. So, you got that on record? Is that okay? Okay. See, Councilor Hiltz, you got your light on there.
Yeah, that was beforehand.
Beforehand?
Yes.
Okay. All right. We're going to move on to financial services. We have a new policy FIN-05-029 district activity funds. Motion to adopt the policy, to review the policy after 1 year. So, there was, the council provided 7 days notice on December the 16th. So do we have a mover that the municipal council adopt the policy FIN-05-29 district activity funds as attached to the January 6, 2026 agenda, and the policy is reviewed after 1 year. Moved by Councilor Gates, second by Councilor Harding. All those in favor or against, please vote accordingly. Motion carried. All right. Board and committee meetings. Are there any verbal reports from committees of council? Councilor Sappington.
I have a couple. First off, the Police Advisory Board met in the Tides Room on December 17th at 1:30. The board was introduced to Inspector William Collier and Staff Sergeant Dan Archibald of Kings District RCMP. Staff Sergeant Archibald presented the quarterly Kings District Policing Report for July through September. There were some great discussions during the roundtable about some of the categories, such as unhoused, human trafficking, domestic violence, and hate crimes. Terry Brown, Manager of Inspection Enforcement, provided an overview of the Chief of Police Conference and Governance Briefing. Craig Gibson, Emergency Service Coordinator, provided an update on the status of recruiting for the Police Advisory Board and noted the interview for the citizen applicant approved by Council would happen early in the new year, At the time of the meeting, the vacancy for the ministerial appointee had not been filled. However, staff were recently notified that the ministerial appointment has now been filled and the appointee will be eligible to attend the next Police Advisory Board meeting to be held on February 18th, 2026. And then for Diversity Kings, we met December 1st. We discussed what a wonderful job staff did at the Building Communities of Peace Conversation on Anti-Hate Strategies event at the Kingston Lions Club. Deputy Mayor McPherson also shared his experience at the Canning Equity and Anti-Racism Policy Plan info session. He noted the event was well attended and that there is a strong movement toward diversity in Canning. And then we also talked about our committee terms of reference and bylaw 64 and 102 and how some wording may be needing updating in the future. Thank you.
Thank you. Any questions to Councillor Sappington on her 2 verbal reports? No? All right. We'll move on to external committees. Is there any verbal reports from external committees? No? So can I get a motion to receive all those reports, please? Moved by Councillor Lutz, second by Councillor Allen. All those in favor or against, please vote accordingly. Motion carried. Okay. Is there any other business coming before council? All right, who's flashing? Councillor Lutz.
Thank you, Mayor. Just briefly, I just wanted to acknowledge that there's been quite a flurry in my district of phone calls regarding garbage pickup. Recently, just with the inclement weather, the snow, the holidays, I've been receiving lots of calls about missed collection, which is pretty normal when you have a rural area. And so I just wanted to acknowledge that that's been brought, will be brought forward through the Valley Services Region Committee. And also the topic of when someone misses their garbage collection and them having to take it to Valley Waste and then pay a tipping fee. So it's just something I wanted to acknowledge that we'd like to have a discussion about, or that I'll be bringing to the Valley Regional Services Committee for discussion on behalf of just the dozens of residents who've reached out about miscollection, having to pay, which they feel, of course, is sort of double dipping, paying to bring it to Valley Waste when they've already paid for garbage pickup and it's been missed. So just wanted to acknowledge that that's been a struggle for some folks in my district this winter. Thanks.
Just one question on that to you, Councillor Lutz. The problem, because I've done the same thing myself, but the problem is if it was my fault and then I end up taking it, if it's my fault, maybe it wouldn't be, but then I take it out and pay the $10 fee and get upset with it. You know, it's a situation that, how do you determine whether Dave didn't have it out there in time for the truck or whether the truck didn't pick it up?
That's a good point. Fair. Thanks.
Councillor Sappington.
The Deputy Mayor and I attended, as well as Councillor Bob Best, the swearing-in ceremony for the new Council of Annapolis Valley First Nation. So I just wanted to wish congratulations to Chief Rodney Peterson, Councillor Murray Kopich Jr., Councillor Shanika McEachern, and Councillor Daniel Toney. Councillor Daniel Toney now, if you don't know, is our citizen member on the Police Advisory Board. There seems to be a great council, and the community seemed very excited, and the hall was packed with attendees.
Great, thank you. Councillor Best.
Thank you, Mayor. Talk about garbage. I had lots of calls on Lockhart Mountain Road. Saturday they wouldn't pick it up because the roads were not plowed and everything. So I got a hold of the province of Nova Scotia. They sanded day before yesterday, and they picked up the garbage today. So there is a good story sometimes when you get a hold of the right people that can pick up garbage. So the Lockhart Mountain Road got picked up today.
Thank you. Okay. Wow. We'll move on then. I don't see any other business. It's time for any member of the public who would like to come forward and state your name and for the record, and you get a couple of minutes to address council. And unless you're it, Ken, so if you don't come up, we're going to be out of here. All right. Looking for a motion to adjourn, please. Moved by Councillor Gates, second by Councillor Peckford. All those in favor or against, please vote accordingly. What? Motion carried.